I'm Dr. Francis Yahia, and today I want to talk to you about the primary Jungian archetypes in the astrology chart. If you want to learn how to speak and listen archetypally, I'm having a lecture on February 21st, and you can reach out to me for subscription to that. I want to talk about the main Jungian archetypes, and then we'll go into sort of the archetypes that we've now learned are planetary archetypes or brand archetypes. So first, let's start with Jung's theory. Persona as the mask that we wear. We're going to link that to the ascendant and the moon. The shadow, we're going to link to the 8th house cusp. The self, we're going to link to the sun and the 5th house. And the anima and the animus, being the masculine and feminine, what he called the divine couple, is going to be Mars and Venus. So we can start to see how the person lives these out according to the astrology. And then I'll give like a quick round of all of the archetypes that I'm going to cover in my workshop and those that we see in popular culture and in storytelling and so forth. So let's start with the persona. So let's start with the ascendant. The ascendant is a mask that we wear indeed, but however, the ascendant is actually the only sign in which we can raise consciousness. So the sun is our rational mind, the moon is our emotional nature, and the ascendant is that sun and moon, meaning mother, father. The ascendant is actually what in my models calls the 48 to 52, or the midpoint, which is how we raise consciousness. It's how we find the midpoint of the sun and the moon. But we don't feel that the ascendant is part of us. We struggle with that ascendant. So then indeed we wear it almost as a mask and as what Jung would call the persona. So that's why oftentimes we're saying, oh, the personality is the ascendant. However, I am a big believer that the persona, the true persona, is the moon. The moon is our emotional matrix, our emotional nature, our childlike nature, how we try to get our needs met in a very unhealthy, manipulative way. So in this person's case, their moon is in Gemini. So it could be intellectual manipulation. It could be always needing a way out, options, multiples of things. And the second house being values or finances. So this is going to be the arena with the moon by sign and by house in which the persona is really going to live itself out. Now, let me explain. Your persona, or your personality, your ego, which we're going to see with Mars as your animus, are never, they never go away. The thing is that we want to get self, we want to get the sun to rule the chart, right? We want to become our sun sign. We're all born into our earth sign. So we're not really born into our sun. We become the sun as we grow and go around the zodiac. So these layers of ourselves, they don't ever go away. The mask never fades and the persona and the ego never go away. What they do is imagine the sun and they kind of jump on top and they ride along. So the divine will or the self gets in charge, but we still use the ego and the persona to help us achieve whatever that sun or self with a capital S directive is. So this is one layer, but it really is actually misunderstood astrologically from a consciousness studies perspective. So really it's the moon that's the major persona and the mask. Now let's talk about the shadow. The shadow is found in the cusp of the 8th house. So there are 9 Hydra heads in the myth of Hercules. If you want to know more about Hercules, I have a whole video on all of the 12 labors of Hercules. The 8th labor is that he has to go defeat the Lernaean Hydra. You can't kill the Hydra, you tame the Hydra, and you bring consciousness and raise the Hydra. So what is on the cusp of our 8th is what has to quote unquote die, although it's not that it dies, is that we learn for ourself or our unmasked self, our true divine nature, to surpass that, even though we understand that is housed in the desires body and we can never eliminate it, we want to get ahead of that. So the cusp of the 8th is where you're going to see your main shadow aspect. This person has it in Scorpio. So we're talking lust as a major archetype here. And it's in the decanat of the moon. So there can be a lot of attachment. And if you go back to the archetype of the moon back here, as I said, then we're back to that emotional nature or that persona or mass. Not everybody's going to have it matched up by archetype that way, or by decanat or by planet, but this person happens to have that. The next is the self with the capital S. So now we're talking about the creator, the divine will, the hero of our story, which is us. The house where our sun is by sign and by decanat will tell us how to live in the world, find our purpose, and achieve this self or this divine will that we all seek. This person is a 10th house sun, so a public image or a public persona, a public image is going to be important. It's Aquarius, so perhaps, which is great when you have a lustful, let's say, or attached shadow aspect. Here it's Aquarius, so learning to detach and perhaps being intellectual, more scientific rather than more emotionally based, which is all of us with this moon in Gemini. And then it's the first decanat. So the first decanat is going to be Aquarius. So now we're talking about a Uranus person or an Aquarius person with a Uranus or an Aquarius decanat. That is a lot of independence, a lot of freedom. And so if here the emotional nature or the persona is saying have multiples so that you never run out of people to meet your needs, and the sun is saying independence times two, reliance is on self, you start to realize how if we live in the persona, the self, the true self, the divine will is actually sort of suppressed and watered down. So this is the correlation you want to see. And if you want to find out how to unify both aspects, because like I said, we need both, the answer is the ascendant. The ascendant here is in Aries in the decanat of Jupiter or Sagittarius. So now let's talk about the planetary archetypes. The class that I'm going to be teaching is on the planetary archetypes, but I will link them back to branding archetypes and these traditional sort of archetypes that we see in all story or these basic Jungian archetypes. So we'll start with Mars. Mars is the creator. So this also links me to Jung's archetypes of the Anima and the Animus. So the Anima is like the feminine principle in a masculine or in a man. This was old back in the day of Jung. Things have obviously changed. So kind of let me bring it to the universal law, the law of gender, which really is where he got that from. And Jung was a closeted metaphysician and astrologer. The lover, which is Venus, is the animus or the anima of the animus is the masculine part in a woman, and the anima is the feminine part of a man. So we start to see that. This has nothing to do with gender. This has to do with your psyche. And I bring you back to the symbol of the caduceus, the symbol of medicine. It has a spinal column called the sushumna and the two spiraling snakes, Ida and Pingala. We all have a Pingala, which is our masculine, our Mars, our creator, or our animus. And we all have a Venus, an Ida, a feminine, or an anima, represented here by the lover and the creator. So this is also known as the chalice. This is also known as the sword. So we see this in mythology over and over. Shiva, Shakti, we see it in Dionysus, all of the transgender gods that have always explained the law of gender as balanced. So Jung identified back in the day much clearer masculine and feminine principles because it was a different time. But now in the time that we're living in the age of Aquarius, it's important that we understand that we need to balance both of these. So that's where you would see your animus and your anima, despite how you live in your gender roles. So Mars is creator. Chiron is the everyday man. Venus is the lover. The sun is the hero. Mercury is the trickster or the jester. Jupiter is the seeker or the explorer. Neptune is the innocent. Also, he called it the pure. Black moon is the ruler. Uranus is the rebel or the freedom seeker. Pluto is the magician. This is the Wheel of Fortune, doesn't count. This is Earth, the node. Moon is the nurturer, and Saturn is the sage or the senex. So according to the archetypes, we can see where we're going to live out that particular archetype in our chart by house, by sign, by decanat, and then by aspects, how the myths, as I said in my previous video, speak to one another. Thank you very much.